Hey guys, today we're going to use HTTP4k's client support to integrate an external API. In the past, we achieved full test coverage of our service without attaching it to a real server. This works because an HTTP4k HTTP handler is just a function that accepts a request and returns a response. It makes no difference whether the request came from a real server or from our tests. This same function can be used in client code to act as a gateway to the internet when implemented by a real HTTP client. But we can take advantage of this in our tests. We can inject a fake using yet another API. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Okay, so for our integration, what I was thinking we would do is make the name optional when we're creating a cat. And then we use this cat names API over here to generate one for us. So if we look at this example call over here, we get a list of cat names in list format. We can change how many cat names we get, and if we omit the limit, we just get one. And in this case, all we really need is one. So let's get started here. Let's make a cat names client, and this is going to take a host and the internet, which is just an HTTP handler, just like our server. So we're going to have a get cat names function, which takes an optional limit, and it's going to return a list of names. So let's set up our request over here. If we look at the docs, we have the host name, which we're going to be injecting in elsewhere. But what we want is the path and the query arguments. Oops. Yep. So we're going to copy that path and we're going to put it into our get over here. And we can also define a limit lens, which is a query. It's an integer and it's optional with the name of limits. So just like with a body lens, we can use our query lens to inject our optional limits. So then we can exchange our request with the internet to get a response. And we're going to want to check to see if the response was successful. So if it wasn't successful, then just return an error. Otherwise, we are going to create a lens over here. This is going to be the cat names list lens, I guess. This is going to be a body lens with our auto JSON converter, where it's a array of strings. And the reason why we can't use a list is because of a quirk with Moshi. So we pass our names list lens. What's wrong with that? Oh, toLens, yes. So we pass our response through the lens and it's going to be an array. So we just need to convert it to a list. Oh, I forgot to use our host. So host.path. There we go. So if this was https catsapi.com, we're just appending the path to it. And that is all good. So let's compile here. And in our cat service, because the name property of data is optional, we need to have a fallback. So let's inject our client over here. And we fall back to catnames.getNames. Since we know that a limit of null is just 1, we don't have to put a limit in, otherwise we could just put 1. And we want the first element. Okay, that's good. Compile again. And inside main, our cat service, constructor doesn't compile because we need a cat names client. So first we'll need our host. So the cat names API host is a URI, and if this was a production application and the dev local prod API might change, we would probably make it required. But I think I'm just going to make it defaulted and fall back to the host over here. So this has to include the HTTPS. Doesn't need any sort of path to it. Okay, so down here, we want to get our host, so cat names API host, and we want to pass in the internet, which we don't actually have yet. So what I like to do is inside of our create app function, we also inject the internet as a thing that you need to create your service. And then inside the main function, we need a internet. So the way HTTP4k works is an HTTP handler is the client, and built into core is the Java HTTP client, which works perfectly fine. However, if we were to go to the HTTP4k docs over here and go to clients, we see that we have a bunch of other options we can choose from. Let's say that we want OK HTTP. We're going to add that to our build Gradle. And inside of our main function, instead of Java HTTP clients, we can do OK HTTP. And if we have a look over here, there are some things we can use to override it. We can put in a custom implementation. We can change the body mode from defaulting to having everything stored in memory to streams and input streams. But the defaults that we have are okay. Next, I'm foreseeing inside of our cats test, we will need to also override the internet. But this is going to be different. We could just say that it's a Java HTTP client and then expose our test service over the internet. But there's two reasons we don't really want to be doing this. First, if we're depending on something that's actually running on the internet, our build depends on that thing being running, which kind of sucks. Second, if we were to fake the cats API but still have it run over the internet, that kind of slows things down a little bit. So instead of putting a Java HTTP client, we are going to use a reverse proxy. Now the way that this works is it takes a var args of hosts to HTTP handlers. So whatever our host is going to be, we could actually make it a const. Cats API host is a URI of http cats.test. Sure. And inside of our environment, we're going to override that. Oops. Cat names API host of cats API host. Let's actually change that. Cat names API host. Yes. And over here, we can take our cat names API host, just get the host, and then pair it with a fake handler that we will create. So let's make a new class over here. This is going to be the cat names fake cat names. And we don't actually need a class, we just need a function here. Fake cat names, which is going to return an HTTP handler, which is just going to be a list of routes. And if we have a look at our client over here, the path is this. So we bind that to a get, and we'll want to get our limit over here. So the limit lens takes the request, And let's just get this to compile here. Let's return a empty response. Okay, so this limit here is nullable. So let's just say it's going to default to 1, which we know is how the actual API works. But let's replace this magic number here. Default limit equals 1. Okay, so we need to actually create our results. And for that, we'll do build list, where we repeat limit times, and for each repetition, we are going to add a name. So we need some names to work with. Now there are some libraries that will just generate random names for you, but for now, I'm just going to create my own list of cat names. So Kratos, Athena, Tigger, Smokey, Bandits, Sylvester, Taz, Harley, and Titan. Okay, that's probably good enough for now. So from our names, we're going to take a random one, and looking ahead, we want our fake API to be reproducible. So we're going to want to pass in an actual random implementation that we're going to seed. Otherwise, we're just going to get truly random stuff, which isn't going to be useful for our test. So then let's go and add that to our response. So it's names list lens of result, but since this is a list, we need to change it to a typed array. So that'll work. We go back to our cats test and we create fake cat names, and we need a random. We could share this random here, but there isn't really any great reason to. This random is used for other things, and the more times we share that random, basically if we use the random in a different order, then all of our other random generations will change, and that's kind of annoying. So let's just use a different random here using the same seed, and that should compile, and we can run sanity here just to make sure everything is the same, and it is not. If we look at our OpenAPI spec, we see that the name used to be non-nullable and now is nullable. So let's accept that change. I've got my cat staring at me through the door. He hates when I abandon him. All right, so that should pass. Yep, but let's actually add a new test case here to demonstrate our new capabilities. So let's copy this. So create cat without name, or with random name. So we'll change this from toggles to null, and we'll run this. Okay, so we get a name of Titan. That's fine. We'll approve that test. Oops. And we'll run it again just to make sure that it is consistent. And it is. Cool. Let's try running this for real. So if we go to localhost 8000, so we can now create a cat without a name. So let's set this to null, execute, and we have 401 unauthorized because we need to get a new API key. So let's do that. Let's log in using our simple web app over here. Then we'll go back, reauthorize our request, create a cat without a name, execute, and we got Narrow Moss. That is a very, very strange name, but it works. Let's list our cats, and we got Kratos and Narrow Moss. And there we go. That's it. So that was how to integrate an external API into your service. Not only does the symmetry of the HTTP handler make it easy to get good test coverage, but it also means we can use the same request response model for all HTTP interactions, which simplifies things nicely. Next, we'll start looking into how to package and deploy our app on AWS. But let me know in the comments if there's any other topics I missed. And that's it. See you later.